for the tabling of that document. Is there anyone opposed to that course of action? There is none. The call went to Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to rise on behalf of the Green Party to support this Ombudsman Cost Recovery Bill. And unlike many of the speakers, with the exception of Mr Okenvold, so far in the debate, I was part of the Select Committee that conducted the financial review into the Office of the Ombudsman and prompted the need for this legislation. And I'm pleased to say, Mr Speaker, that there can be no doubt, indeed, that that office is in crisis and that intervention is required. I thought it would be helpful, first of all, to reflect upon the importance of the Ombudsman's office and the vital role.
Point of order, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
I suspect I just saw something which is thoroughly untoward in a democracy, particularly on a very important matter, and that is the whip of a party going and telling other members not to take their call. That's serious.
That has got nothing to do with the order of the House. Holly Walker.
Mr Speaker, I was reflecting on the vital role of the Ombudsman and the purpose, the democratic and constitutional purpose that they play, because the Ombudsman provides an independent, impartial check on the quality, fairness and integrity of administration and decision-making in the wider state sector. That includes investigating complaints about the administrative conduct of central and local government agencies, complaints about the decisions of ministers of the Crown, information and guidance to employees wishing to report serious wrongdoing in their workplace, including whistleblowing, and to examine and monitor the treatment of persons detained in prisons, premises approved and agreed under the Immigration Act, health and disability places of detention, and youth justice residences. So, Mr Speaker, we often think of the Ombudsman in relation only to the Official Information Act and complaints placed about that. But in fact they have a far wider role, which also includes to protect and monitor the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So all of those functions are very critical to both our constitution and our democracy and to the public's right to honesty, integrity and transparency in those processes. So a very important role indeed, and very important that it's an office that is adequately functioned and adequately resourced. And what we heard at the Select Committee during the financial review that has prompted this legislation is that the office is in crisis. So, for example, the office's budget is established for a workload of 800 to 1,000 cases at any given time, but it now routinely deals with between 16 to 1,800 cases at any one time, with no corresponding increase in funding. At the time of the review, the office had 1,854 live cases, and of those, over 300 were unassigned to an investigator. They were sitting unassigned because all the investigators were at their maximum tolerable workload, and tolerable being a very important word there. These are people who are under a great deal of stress in this office. That meant that the office was consistently failing to meet deadlines and predicted that it would continue to do so because of a lack of resources. And the effect on staff wellbeing in the Ombudsman's office, we heard at the committee, was very serious indeed. Because they were currently understaffed by 4 investigators and there had been no movement in staff salaries since 2007, they had a very high staff turnover. And they also had issues of staff sickness and stress leave because of high rates of serious illness and the stresses placed on staff working under the conditions which we have described, with the growing complexity and volume of cases and the lack of funding to deal with them. So it's not a pretty picture, Mr Speaker, to be a staff member in the Ombudsman's office at the moment. And this bill from the Honourable Shane Jones helps, I think, to partially resolve these issues by allowing the ability to recover costs for the Ombudsman, as well as promoting greater compliance from the government departments and agencies being investigated. And Mr Speaker, if I may at this point give a personal example, I have a complaint with the Ombudsman which is now sitting undealt with for almost a year. And I don't hold any animus to the Ombudsman's office for that state of affairs, but it is an important case where the police, the government agency, cited a legal opinion in the media to say that they had decided to stop having sniffer dogs doing drug tests in schools because they'd had a legal opinion telling them that they should no longer do that. And we requested that legal opinion under the Official Information Act. It was not forthcoming, so we made a complaint to the Ombudsman, and in which it transpired that no such legal opinion actually existed, and yet the agency, the police, had gone on record publicly claiming that this opinion was the reason for no longer doing something. In fact, it didn't exist, and the Ombudsman should be able to give a remedy in this case, Mr. Speaker, and because they are under-resourced, they are not able to do so. That's one example of why we need this bill, and I commend this bill to the House.
Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A short call. Can I first of all just acknowledge the Honourable